Let's talk about ERP software, SAP, or as you often say, SAP. And many people say, thank you, I wanted to tune out anyway, have a nice weekend, off you go. The question is, and that's exactly what we're going to talk about today, why do so many people, why does almost anyone hate ERP software? And by the way, SAP, as they say in Germany, or SAP, as they often say internationally, why do so many people hate that piece of software? Why do people often say the ERP software is the most horrible piece we have in our organization? Why do people often genuinely detest to work with it and say, no matter how hard I try, I will never fully understand how this piece actually works. I hate it with vengeance. And now we have to talk about why does this happen? Welcome to this week's episode. My name is Niels Brabandt. So why does everyone hate? Of course, this is a bit of a punchy title here, a bit edgy. Why does everyone hate SAP or SAP? That's of course not the case. We do not want to say that they all hate one piece of software. Some people will now say, well, I do, because I had people genuinely saying that, but that's of course not the representative majority. When we talk about this piece of software, let's set the record straight first. We talk about a category which is called ERP software. Talking about ERP software means you have to understand what it means in the first place. So let's say you have a small business and you say, hey, you have to keep your books. How do you want to do that? And people say, well, you just take an Excel file, right? And you have structure of folders and that's going to work. Yes, probably that's going to work. Then you grow larger and larger and larger. And then at a certain point, I say, hey, did you grow? That, yeah, we're now in multiple countries. And I say, okay, do you pay everyone the same? And they say, well, we can't. They have different currencies. Okay, so do they all work the same hours? No, they can't because we have different labor laws in different countries. Okay. Do you all get given the same bonus? No, because we have different regulation in different countries. That's exactly the point why at a certain point, complexity doesn't go linear, but exponential. So the first aspect here is we talk about enterprise software. Enterprise software. When I tell you companies such as Siemens or Bosch or Airbus or Boeing or General Motors or whatever large corporation you mention, if I tell you they all use the same piece of software, you would say, how does that work? And here we go. These enterprises need to plan their resources. So E is for enterprise. So we know there's a high level of complexity. Then you have resources across all industries, and of course, all of these corporations probably do not say, "Yeah, we just live during the day, and then we see how things go, and yeah, let's see how." No, that's not how they work. They need to be able to plan their resources and also be sure that no one changes anything. Because I give you a very simple example. Let's say you have an international bank and you have your bank account with that bank. And now I tell you, let's don't make it too complicated. We could just have Excel sheets to run your accounts. And then you probably will say, wait a minute. In Excel, someone can just change the data and suddenly money is gone. That doesn't work exactly. And that's why we have to admit in the first place the complexity we talk about here. When someone tells you, please write a piece of software which is going to be deployed around the globe in different industries, and no matter if it's an international bank or a globalized noodle company, it has to work for them. Quite a challenge, isn't it? So let's be serious here. If you hate that piece of software, the complexity this piece can portray in software is quite beautiful, because what you need to be able to do is when people work with the data, they need to be able to change during daily business. They need to be able to change anything they need to be allowed to change. They need to make changes when changes are necessary. However, they should never be allowed to make anything disappear so no one's cheating in the system. Try to design that. So here comes the reality. Now we talk about reality. And of course, the first thing that matters is people say, look, I have a daily business to run, and ERP software works the following. It takes forever to implement it. And once it's implemented after years and years and years of work, then they tell us, oh, there's a new version, so we have to update it. And of course, then the management says, oh, yeah, we do this at the end of the year, beginning into next year. And people are sitting there and say, so while we have the end of season mayhem, we change the software, which leaps way into the next year, where we should do all the accounts for the tax filings. And in due course of that, you change the software. Are you serious? And that is a massive issue. People are, and we have to admit that they have a point here, people are frustrated about software vendors that push out half-done software, half-baked pieces of software architecture, and then businesses have to pay consultants to actually get what they paid for in the first place. And sometimes even after they paid these businesses, they say, oh, now we have a really good piece on your local VAT regulation. By the way, can we sell this to others? Because it's really nice. And then they're even allowed to sell it off to others. So you basically pay the vendors research and development. Product matures at the client side. And that is, of course, something where people are deeply frustrated. On top of that, quite often people experience the following. They say, yeah, we got this new ERP software, and then we got training 2 days. 2 days from 9 to 12, that was it. And from there, people said, good luck. That was it. Nothing else. When you leave the people behind, you will never be able to succeed with your software implementation. As we always say, I do interim management, and I am now a project leader in a SAP project. I'm not a SAP expert. However, I know how to manage people, I think, reasonably well. Otherwise, they probably wouldn't call me in. Very important with this kind of people project is people are the ones that use it every single day. So listen to them first. The first thing we found out was, who are the opinion leaders? Who are the most affected people? Let's talk to them first. And please do not come along with management told you it is how it is and you have to accept it. Because I can tell you the revolution from the ground will cause mayhem up to board level. So you really have to pick up the people, train them professionally with professional trainers. And just a best practice here. What we have in the project I am leading right now is the following. We have floor walkers. If this concept is unknown to you, it means the following. It's quite a large international organization, and they have quite a number of floors. On each floor where people use SAP, SAP, or any kind of ERP software, we have floor walkers, experts on the matter, and they have mobile phones with them. People can call the mobile phone of the person on their floor, and then they come along and they solve the problem with them on site. If they can't solve it, they take it with them, they open the ticket with the IT, and of course the user can add something to it if they want to. However, very important here is floor walkers help. On top of that, we told people, look, if you don't use the floor walkers, that's your problem then. Because you have the floor walkers for 4 weeks' time. 4 weeks is quite a while, and it's a tremendous amount of money we invest here. So when you have any kind of issues, please test them now. Please test your reporting, test your processes, test your procedures, test your daily, everything. Test everything, because after 4 weeks, we are down to open a ticket with the IT. So it is important that the training is done professionally, because as soon as you get to the implementation, let's be real about that. When I still hear that organizations tell me, oh yeah, we have this ERP project, our internal IT is doing that. Really? Are they? Okay. I give you an example. Let's say you have a couple of issues with your house and you say, yeah, a bit of plumbing work needs to be done, bit of electricity work, not running too well. Windows are not doing too well either. So some window work and bit with the ceiling, bit carpentry work, carpenters needed, and bit of concrete crippling down here. So maybe a bit of that. And then I will tell you, oh, all these experts, way too expensive. I'm going to send you an all-rounder. They can do all of that. You most likely will say, that's not safe. They are not qualified for all of that. And that's exactly the metaphor you need to hear here. Your IT is there to make the daily business run. And of course, you have specializations for different pieces of software within your organization, software which is used on a daily basis. Implementing an ERP software, of course, your IT should help with that, but it's not a daily business task. Implementing an ERP software or updating to the next version usually happens depending on what happens with laws, usually every 2 to 5 years. Not very much more often. Sometimes, depending on which industry, you can push it very far to 5 to 10 years, but then you usually have a huge investment backlog. So not advisable. So very important is ERP software means you need to get specialists in. This is called professional services. And I'm not self-advertising myself here. I'm not a SAP expert. I am a resource manager in this project. That is my leadership role there. So there are people professionally focusing only on, for example, Navision or Dynamics or SAP or Salesforce or whatever else you're implementing. use these professionals. What you think you save because you probably fell off the chair when you saw their daily rate. And yes, it's high, but they are very good at what they're doing. So when you think you can save money there, I can tell you, you pay quadruple the amount of that afterwards. So be sure not to make a short-sighted decision here. And by the way, as soon as your IT helps, you grow your own knowledge and experience. And please document that. Have a wiki, have something where you write things down, because otherwise you always have to rely on an external company. You grow more and more knowledge, more and more experience, yet your job of the core internal IT is not to do ERP implementations on their own. That's why you have professional companies assisting you with the matter. That's where the project of knowledge and experience documentation always comes in. On top of that, we have one last bit of issue here when still I see that organizational leaders say, oh yeah, ERP, right? Yeah, that's an IT project. Hint, it's not. It's also an IT project, but leaders are involved in exactly the same way. One of the main aspects why people get frustrated with ERP software is because they see and they feel and they realize and they perceive and they get that people are sitting on a very high level saying, I'm not using any of these pieces of software, so I genuinely don't care. Yeah, we just update the system, tell them they have to deal with it. And people see that you did exactly that. When leaders decouple themselves from the whole system, which is a core business aspect of your daily routines, a core business aspect of your value creation, and you think, I couldn't care less because, I'm C-level something. I just give presentation that others created for me. When you think that this is the work, I got some really bad news for you. So it's extremely important. Leadership needs to be sold on the matter. Leadership needs to engage. Leadership needs to interact with the project. As soon as you stop doing that, everything goes south from there. So as soon as you have everyone on board, the leadership team from highest level to mid-tier level, and then you implement everything together with the people who later will use it, your project will run way more smooth. And then I can tell you, way less people will hate it afterwards. You will not make anyone a fan of it. However, as soon as you approach it with the right amount of human understanding for real organizational issues within your organization, your project will go a lot more smooth than you can ever think. Than you can ever think. And I wish you all the best putting this in your organization. And when you now say, wait a minute, I have a couple of questions here. So first, of course, when you now watch me on YouTube, feel free, of course. So first, thank you very much for leaving a like here. And of course, you can subscribe to my channel. Thank you very much for doing so. You can also leave a comment, or if you like, when you now listen to me on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, leave 5 stars here. Thank you very much for doing so. We had great rankings again last week for the very first time in Luxembourg, where all the big financial firms are. We were in the top 15, actually ranked 12th. I didn't expect that. So beyond all of these big law firms and big publications and financial, suddenly Niels is in between there. Thank you very much for making this possible, and thank you very much for helping me on the way to grow this podcast further. Of course, you can recommend the podcast online, offline, to friends, family, colleagues, anywhere, online, offline, social media. You can tag me in your postings, of course, because then I will comment. I'll also give you natural outreach into my network, so feel free to do that as well. One thing I always recommend is we have leadership tips. The leadership tips you see are on YouTube. So as soon as you go on YouTube, the YouTube Shorts is what you're looking for. And we have the big episodes once per week. However, we often have a daily tip at least, or even more. We are far ahead of the goal. I promised you one leadership tip per week. You see now there's a lot more out there. So the YouTube Shorts, as the name says, only available on YouTube. So it really pays off not only to subscribe to my channel, but also put the little bell in there. When you put the little bell in there, you get a tiny, tiny notification as soon as something new is online. And that, of course, means you're not going to miss out on anything new here. You can, of course, also follow me on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. On top of that, when you now say, hey, we need something really specific, we need a trainer, a speaker, coach, consultant, mentor, project interim manager, feel free to contact me anytime. nb-networks.biz is my website. Looking forward to seeing you there. And of course, you can drop me an email at nb@nb-networks.com. So when you drop me an email to nb@nb-networks.com, we can always discuss something very specific or just exchange thoughts, have a discussion. All of that is possible at any point in time given. On top of that, when you say, do we have live sessions? Yes, we do. expert.nb-networks.com. As soon as you go there, put your email address in there. You receive only one email every Wednesday morning, and no worries, it's 100% content ad free guarantee. In this email, you get full access to all the podcasts, the articles, the video casts, everything. No paywall. In other contact means, in other media, you will have to pay there. It's all free. So I'm looking forward to seeing you there. And of course, in every email, you find the date, the time, and the access link for our live sessions. And then we can do a Q&A there, and you get all the questions answered you actually want to have answered. If you now say we have a larger group within our company, like to have a private Q&A, just drop me an email and we do a private Q&A just explicitly for you. And of course, you can follow me on social media. Feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn or leave a follow on Instagram. You can also, of course, leave a like on Facebook or follow me on YouTube and put the bell in there so you actually don't miss out on anything. The most important thing, however, is always the last bit that I say. Apply, apply, apply what you heard in this podcast, because only when you apply what you heard, you will see the positive change that you obviously want to see. I wish you all the best doing so. Feel free to contact me anytime. And good news here, I answer every single message within 24 hours or less. So I'm looking forward to hearing from you at the end of this podcast, as well as at the end of this video cast. There's only one thing left for me to say. Thank you very much for your time.